this is Karen with newclevelandradio.net, and it is time for Avoid the Maze, your journey through life. And you know what? You're not going to avoid the maze. I'm going to tell you that up front. But our guest, and as you know, I always interject, my past as well. When you're going through that maze, it's not about avoiding it. It's about looking around, looking for the options, challenging yourself to keep going. It's very easy to be able to hit a wall, sit down, curl up into a little ball, and wait for something to happen. But typically, if you wait, it's not going to happen. You got to keep moving. My guest today is Amy, and hopefully I'm going to pronounce it right. Is it Lenius?
Lenius.
Lenius. Okay, wasn't sure if the I was silent or not. When I read Amy's bio on podcast, I like so related to it because chronic pain issues are so normal. However, when I was growing up, if anybody had chronic pain, they were considered a hypochondriac because so much chronic pain cannot be identified. Or if it is, they say, oh, well, if you take this pill or do this treatment, it's going to go away. Typically, if you have chronic pain, you're going to have it. You have to learn to live with it, but find ways to reduce it. And I'm so grateful that even though I grew up in that mode in my late teens when my chronic pain started, that by the time I hit my 30s and 40s, it was starting to become, oh, chronic pain is real. And you know what? We have to stop labeling people as complainers. So, Amy, take us on your journey. What got you to where you are today? Because I know it was a tough one.
It was. Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited about this. This is a very aligned podcast for me to be on, I can tell. And I want to celebrate you for a second with all of your accomplishments in this space. Congratulations on all your years of podcasting. That's incredible. So thank you so much for having me. I come from, yes, a background of chronic illness, a condition called endometriosis. It's very hormonally driven and based, and I was diagnosed in my late teens, and it took a long time even for me to get a diagnosis. I started having pain and condition problems in my early teens, and it took years for someone to even look at me and take me seriously, because like you said, it gets almost looked at as you're a hypochondriac, or in my case, oh well, you're just a woman, you're becoming a woman, congratulations, these are just normal female problems. And that didn't sit well with me. So I kept searching for answers, kept searching for help, still going through the medical system, giving whatever support they could give me. But like you said, it was pill after pill after pill. And all of these pills started to make me feel worse in other ways, which compounded with my symptoms. And I kind of had a moment of clarity of, I don't want to do this anymore. In a way of, I want to shift. I want to change what I'm doing, because clearly this system that I am working within right now is not working for me. I'm on all these medications. I've been given all of this advice that has never helped me and never actually taken my pain away. And yet I'm still doing all of these things. And so I had this moment of clarity of, I would like to stop. I would like to stop. I would like to start from scratch, see what is serving me and what isn't, and then build from there, and maybe experiment with other modalities and look into holistic health and look into naturopathy and all of these things. And so I did. I went off of everything that I was on in a safe manner and started from scratch and got to know my body again. I got to know what my symptoms were telling me and dove into seeing a naturopath and learning about myself as a whole. And that's where my favorite word comes in, was holistic. Holistic has been a huge part of not only my physical healing journey, but the mental and emotional healing that has to come along with that as well, which is why I fell in love with that word and why it's my favorite word.
You brought up a couple very major points, and one was you're a woman. Congratulations. This is part of being a woman. And the reality of it is organic pain that you were having, you don't have to have just because you're a woman. Okay. I had something very similar when I was younger, but nobody ever identified it. In fact, it wasn't identified until about 5 years ago, and I am 74. And I developed pelvic floor issues as a teenager. And typically they say, oh, that comes after childbirth, Well, guess what? When I finally found the right doctor and they looked at it, they said, oh my God, how have you lived with this all these years? What did you do? And I hid the pain. It was like, oh, I'm not supposed to have this pain, so I don't have it. But my behavior was poor. And I wasn't taking the medications because nobody gave me any medications. So it's time that women especially speak up, because we know our bodies. We know if it's right or wrong. So how long had you actually suffered until the day that you said, oh, I need a clean slate?
Years. I would say close to a decade, almost. And it was a lot of trial and error, and it was a long decade. But there is something to be said of just because something is common doesn't make it normal or okay. So we get into this realm of women's health where everything is common. Well, it's normal to have pain. It's normal to have pelvic discomfort. It's normal to have extremely painful and debilitating periods. It's normal. But in reality, it's actually just common. It's really common right now. And looking into the deeper dive of why has been really empowering for me to be able to heal that. And so even just that message to women of just because it's common doesn't make it normal or okay or mean you have to deal with it. There are so many modalities out there. Everyone is different. We're all individuals. What worked for me may work for you. It may not, but there's so much value in digging and learning about yourself and learning about your body. Like you said, you know your body best. And that is one of the biggest lessons I learned on this journey is I know when something is wrong. And so when I'm speaking to doctors, it's really, or if you yourself out there are speaking to doctors, it's really important to hold that space that you know your body best. And yes, someone can give you advice and pour into you in a certain way, but you intuitively know.
So when you weaned yourself off of all the chemicals that you were taking and you decided to go holistic, what drove you to holistic? I mean, did you read an article? Did you know somebody who had gone this path? Or was it like, hey, it's so different, I'm just going to jump overboard and get into it?
Yeah, I believe the first step into understanding that was my first appointment with my naturopathic doctor, who started talking to me and about my body as a whole instead of just the piece, instead of just my bits, instead of just and how it's all separate and we're only looking in this one area of your body. He started talking to me about how, well, let's look at your gut health. Let's look at your liver. Let's look at your stress. Did you know stress hormones and all of these things? It was really such a powerful experience to have someone talk to me and look at me like I was this whole being and to teach me that everything affects everything else. We're not separate pieces. And so that's been a huge part of everything I embody now as well, is that our internal environment affects our external environment and vice versa. Our external environment is deeply affecting our internal health.
Yes, absolutely.
Mm. And
Absolutely.
so learning that, understanding that, and embracing that, and then stepping forward in my health journey from that space of all of this as a whole, it's like one big community that works together. And when one piece isn't working, all the pieces aren't working properly. That really helped me take a turn in my health.
It's interesting because when I first started feeling the pain, I remember my mother telling me, and I probably was 11 or 12 years old, honey, that's normal. So every month you're going to feel this way. And I looked at her and I said, do you feel this way? And she had no problems. She
Mm-hmm.
had no pain. In fact, she would say to me that when her menstrual cycle started, she was never prepared. She didn't have cramps. She didn't have a headache, nothing. She was just part of her daily life. And I said to her, but you don't have pain. Why do I have pain? And she said, oh, that's okay. You'll grow out of it. Someday you'll get married and you'll grow out of it. Well, I got married and it got worse because I didn't know I had pelvic prolapse. And so for years I thought, what is wrong with me? Am I the only one who has pain during intercourse, is terrified of having relations with my husband because it hurts, but I can't let him know because that's going to like take all the romance out of it. Why aren't I getting pregnant? My hormone levels were right, but nobody was telling me that my pelvic my pelvis was so engaged, that it was so tense that it wasn't going to let anything get beyond it, and so it took, like I said, it took me many, many years, a number of miscarriages, luckily 2 very healthy young men now, grown men. But when I think about what I went through it because I didn't know any better. And that's why I'm so glad that you're here to share. Again, your journey may not be exactly what somebody else should take, but it's at least nice to know that there is another way. So when they looked at your whole body, what was your reaction?
I felt very seen. I felt very seen. I felt very safe. I felt very empowered to ask questions that I had wanted to ask, but have never been given the permission to or even felt safe enough to with other doctors. And I just, I felt so taken care of, for sure, which was really important to me. But also, I learned so much of how to take care of myself. So that was just this really first powerful step to get the ball rolling. But what you're saying about it being so isolating and so lonely, that's what is common. It's because we are told to not talk about this stuff. It's not to be talked about. It is not, I mean, some women, it breaks my heart so much. Their hormones and their periods and menopause and all of these things are such taboo topics. They feel like it's such a nasty, terrible, like unimportant thing to be talking about. And that's why we suffer in silence. That's why we feel so alone, even though it is more common to suffer with female related issues, especially internally hormonally, than it is not to right now. I live in Canada. I'm not 100% sure where you're from, but it's like 1 in 6 in Canada. 1 in 6 women struggle with some sort of hormone related chronic pain issue, whether it be PCOS, endometriosis, infertility. There's so much. And so 1 in 6, but yet we're suffering in silence because we're told it's not okay to talk about.
Yeah.
Shh, right? And so yes, our experiences may be different. What we're going through physically may be different, but the emotion and the isolation typically are the same. And that's where we can really bond with other women.
And I'm going to take this out of the realm that I normally do in all my shows. I never get political, but my concern here in the United States is that women are going to even clam up more about these issues. And that to me is very, very sad. Um, I had a few people that I could talk to about, how I was feeling. Nobody had any answers. In fact, um, I had a sister-in-law at the time who kept saying, my shoulder is here for you. But I could also tell she was getting tired of hearing it from me. It's like, come on, Karen, you've been talking about this for 10 years, 20 years, 30 years. You just got to learn to live with it. But when nothing reduces it and you're really not being taken seriously, you start to think that maybe you are mentally off balance. And I mean, I hate to say this out loud, but that's how I felt until I had a doctor, and happened to be a male doctor. Okay. I was going in because I had a kidney stone, and the kidney stone they got rid of it. And he said to me on exam, have you always felt like this? And I looked at him and I go, well, isn't it supposed to hurt? Aren't I supposed to be pulling back? And he goes, no. And he said, how long has this been going on? And I said, probably since I was 11 years old. And I thought he was going to fall off his chair. Hasn't anybody ever explained this to you? And since I've come out and talked about it, I cannot believe how many women have come out and talked about endometriosis, pelvic prolapse, hormonal unadjustments. It's like, where have we been all along?
Mm-hmm.
So what made you decide to go public? Because sometimes we're told, well, you're doing better, so you don't have to talk to anybody about it.
Mm-hmm. It was really important for me to start talking about it. One, I do have a background in anatomy and physiology, and I love the human body. And so I do have a bit of an education there to stand on with, okay, let's understand our bodies better. And then through my experience of learning about my own body and healing my own body and doing what I needed to do there, I was gifted almost this platform to start talking about it. I was asked to come speak at a natural wellness event and about plants, about herbs, about essential oils. And it was a small space to begin with. And everyone in the room was so just in awe of what I was speaking to them about. You could tell, and I couldn't tell if it was good or bad when you're on stage and people are just
Yeah.
like, did she just say periods? Did she
Yeah.
just say uterus? What are we doing? And so I had this moment of just like, oh no, no, I'm going to keep going. This is okay. And then afterwards, the women that came up to me and have never been spoken to in that way about how they can be empowered to ask questions. They can take some of their health into their own hands, and all of these beautiful things that were said to me that day about how seen and heard they felt. I knew that I had to keep going. And so I got asked to speak at multiple events. It turned into a whole public speaking business for me. But it was just, it's the look on the women's faces of, oh, you see me. It's, I feel so seen. And then all women go through this point of anger as well, where it's, why has no one ever told me this? Why has no one ever empowered me with the information of this is how my body works and how I can work with my body instead of working against it all the time and fighting against it mentally, physically, emotionally, and blaming it and all of these other horrible relationships we get to within ourselves about ourselves. And that's then where I had to take it to another level, is because I was empowering women all around me with this information about how to heal, about how to set up their homes where there's less toxins, less exposure, all of these things that are hindering their hormone health that they do have control over. And I still saw a barrier for them. And especially in the chronic illness space, there is this barrier of, and I hate to say this, but it is true, there is this victim mentality that comes in where there
Right.
is nothing I can do. This is my identity, and I
Yep.
can't do anything about it. And so when we are sick and we envelop it into our identity, it puts us into this victim space of, I can't be helped. And that's where it ends for people, is when they decide that they can't be helped, then they can't be. And
Right.
so then it moved into, okay, I need to also help people with their mental and emotional space as well. And so it has become so obvious to me that your physical health can only heal as much as your mental emotional health does, and vice versa, your mental emotional health versus your physical health. Because when you are feeling crappy physically, it is so hard to feel good mentally and
Oh,
emotionally as well.
absolutely.
Feed each other so deeply. And so empowering people now with holistic self-improvement is now it's my flag now. Yes, I will constantly always empower women with how their cycles work, how working with their hormones is going to set them up, not only physically, but it is incredible to see what women can do when they understand that their hormones are doing things for them and that they are different every day. Men cycle 24 hours. They are the sun. They are the same on a 24-hour rotation. It's so different than what we go through as women.
Right.
Women are like the moon. We are different hormonally, mentally, physically, emotionally. Our brain chemistry, everything is slightly different every day. And during certain periods, we're going to be more naturally energetic. We're going to be more naturally creative and want to be more present outward. And then we have this phase where we want to go inward and have more lower energy. And so that, knowing that helps with your parenthood, with your relationships, with your businesses, everything you're wanting to do for work. It's so empowering. And so holistic self-improvement has been just the most powerful gift I can give to someone is that when you learn to know yourself on a deeper level, build self-belief and self-worth, which means you can believe you can be healthier, you are worthy of feeling healthier and investing in yourself and what that takes, it takes that lid off. It takes that ceiling off that they have put themselves in because now they believe that they are capable of worthy of more. And that has just been this unbelievable mind shift and perspective for me when it comes to health, as well as everything
Exactly.
else in your life.
And when we talk about, you know, our general practitioners, why they, aren't finding some of these things or responding to them, um, it's very obvious to me, at least here in the United States, doctor, the practice of medicine has totally changed since I was a little girl. When I was a little girl, if you got sick, my mother could call the pediatrician, he would come over, he would check things out. He knew what the house looked like, he knew what the environment was like, and I remember one time, for whatever reason, I felt like I couldn't walk and I had pains in the back of my legs. And my mother used to go collecting for March of Dimes, and this was right after one of those campaigns. And I was crying in pain. And so, of course, my mother thought, oh my God, my daughter must have polio. She can't move. And when the doctor came over, I probably was 6 or 7 years old. He said, show me where the pain is. And I showed him. And he goes, well, let's try to bend your leg. And it was like, oh no, that's going to really hurt. He said, okay, let me bend it. And he had this nice soft touch. And he slowly bent my leg, and my leg bent. And I remember saying to my mother, the pain's going away. Many years later, my mother explained to me that he sat down and talked to her, that it was psychological. I was connecting to everything I was hearing about polio. Oh, in fact, that week we had the little sugar cubes with the polio vaccine in it. So my senses were heightened, and therefore my body reacted. But doctors today don't take that time because they can't. The hospitals and insurance are telling them you have 10 minutes per patient.
Yes.
And if the patient talks that whole 10 minutes, guess what? It's over and done with. Holistic medicine is totally different. However, as we all know, insurance basically doesn't pay for it. And so many of us don't go and get the help because it's out of pocket. So how can you speak to those who are saying, hey, Amy's offering us, some great ideas about holistic medicine, but, I can't afford it. And because I can't afford it, I'm going to be in pain the rest of my life.
Hmm. Yeah, and that sucks. It
Yeah,
does. There's no graceful way to put that. That sucks. It sucks that our healthcare, you guys have different healthcare practices and things than we do, not practices, but governmental
right.
like whatever those healthcare systems are would be a better word, a healthcare system. Your guys is slightly different, but it's the same up here. Your northern buddies up here. We also only get so much coverage for anything that is outside of the realm of Western medicine.
Right.
And so that one is tragic and just sucks because there's so much out there that can be done and can be learned and can be gifted to you from other practitioners. That's why there's so many different modalities. What modality might work for me might not work for you, vice versa. You find your own. It's amazing to be able to go out and explore and experience these different ones. However, if you are not financially set up to do that, I just implore you to go and find information yourself. We now have access to endless information, an abundance of information. The majority of what I have learned has been behind the scenes with my own research. Yes, I am privileged enough to understand a lot of the anatomy and physiology terms, and I can go to a deeper level just because of that. But there are so many beautiful, even just books out there that you can listen to on Audible while you're multitasking. There's so much. There are so many incredible social media accounts, naturalists that have all of their information out there. There's free downloads on so many of these platforms. There is so much access to free information right now that we do have more control than I think we do. And so leaning into that, there are so many free groups, podcasts, even like this. How many podcasts out there just trying to have guests like myself speak into people's lives? So finding podcasts, finding books. I mean, you can go to a library and borrow books. You can, like I said, Audible is extremely affordable to listen to audiobooks. And then you can, oh, I don't have time to read. Same. I'm a homeschooling mother of two. I also have two beautiful boys that I was told I would never be able to have. And so I multitask, right? I'm doing the dishes, I'm cleaning,
Right.
I'm doing all these things. I'm listening and learning while I'm doing them because I get it. I also don't have a lot of time to sit and read chapters of books. But if the book is good, I like to buy it and I highlight quite a bit. But there's just finding someone that you resonate with. That's another thing. There are so many people out there who want to speak into your life, but they have to resonate with you. And that's okay. I am not for everybody. You are not for everybody, but we are for somebody. And for those people, I love you. I appreciate you. I am here for you. And if not, then there are so many other people doing the same kind of work that may resonate with you on a deeper level, that speak to a different level and a different thing. Endometriosis might not speak to you. There's someone out there who has Hashimoto's and has done miraculous things with that and wants to tell you about it. It's about looking.
You know, what I think is the most interesting is that we have to believe in ourselves to empower ourselves.
That's
You
right.
know, we can, and I did this for many years. I walked around and, you know, my migraines are because of my hormonal levels, not knowing what was causing those hormonal levels. And people would say to me, "How do you walk around with a migraine all the time?" And I said, "I just do it because I'm not going to go lay in bed with a washcloth over my head. I had to find a way to do it. Medications sometimes work, but they didn't last very long. And so it wasn't like I was gobbling pills to walk around. I just accepted the fact that at times I was just very single vision because the migraine was that bad. But I realize I'm a different person than others that are out there. Some people are not going to be able to cope with the pain. And either they're going to need the medication or they're going to need all that time off. I couldn't take the time off. I have initially was a single mother. Then I was married and my husband also needed my income. And it was like, what am I going to do? I gotta keep working. But it's learning to empower yourself and say, is this what I want? Because if you don't want to feel the pain, I don't think Amy or I are saying that we're going to guarantee you that you're going to get rid of it, but there's a way to manage it and at least manage it psychologically. And I'll tell you, my whole value on my life changed 5 years ago when that doctor said to me, "I know why you have migraines. I know why you've had painful intercourse. I know why you had to have a hysterectomy." And he went through this whole thing and he goes, "You were never told about this." He said, "But you have a collapsed pelvic floor." And he said, "And we can't do anything about that." And my first answer was, "Well, can you fix it?" You know, yeah, surgery, you know, and he
Hey,
goes,
sign me up.
yeah. And the answer was, no, this is part of your body. And so now I understand that. I know there are certain things that I can do to make it less painful, more comfortable. And you know what? The days that I don't have the discomfort, those are the days that I sometimes say to myself, am I crazy? Like, did I really hurt yesterday? But the answer is yes.
Yeah.
I know.
Mhm.
So in Canada, our northern neighbor, your health system is different than ours. It's, in a sense, free for daily medical issues. Anything above and beyond that, it gets to be a little bit more difficult. So those of us in the States who keep saying, oh, we need the Canadian medical care, it's not what we believe it really is.
Don't do it.
Yeah.
As a Canadian who has needed this system so desperately and needed this system to be better for me and it not be able to, the system does not show up the way someone like myself ever needed it to. It's not worth it. It sounds like our healthcare system is so great. It is and it isn't. I I love your guys's your money goes where you need it to. Our money just goes in general to the system. So we pay it through our taxes. It's not
Yeah.
exactly free. And it goes to everything. And so let's say I do have something wrong with me and I need to see a specialist. Well, it's 6 months to a year for me to see a specialist, whether my condition is acute or not, whether I'm debilitated in pain or not. If I need a special test like a CT or an MRI or something like that, months of waiting. It's not ideal. I have had times where I have been asked, well, we can get you into an MRI and we can get you in this week, but you have to pay for it. So I have, even though my healthcare is free, I have spent thousands and thousands of dollars for my free healthcare.
Yeah. Well, ours is very similar at this
Mhm.
point. So in that respect, we're not going to change the healthcare system overnight, but what we can do is be vocal about ourselves. And, I go back and I think about my mother even saying to me, honey, you don't want to be a hypochondriac. Don't tell people. And I looked at her and I said, but if I'm sitting in the classroom and I get this horrible pain, I said, I can't function. And I said, so my teachers need to know. The people around me need to know. I said, I don't remember so many times I would actually fall off of my seat in the classroom because I was in that much pain, but I
Mhm.
wasn't supposed to tell anybody. And it's like, be vocal. Let your
Mhm.
children be vocal. Listen to what they're saying about their bodies.
Yes, always. And just we as women build these identities that we are built for pain. We can do it. We can work through this pain. We can trudge through the day with this pain. I urge you to start asking yourself questions, but do I want to? Do I really need to? We don't seek help for ourselves typically until it is at such a point where it is debilitating. We will take on pain and take on discomfort because of this narrative that that's a part of our physical being, of who we are, of what we're supposed to be. And so we won't get help until it is either very serious and we literally can't function, or other unfortunate things that can happen. And so I know we are so strong. And I know that we are capable of doing incredible things, even while we're uncomfortable, while we're on pain, while we're bleeding, for God's sakes. It's unbelievable what we can accomplish. But what if you're constantly just giving what is left of you? Yes, it is still amazing, but you are still giving what is left of you. Could you imagine what more you could be putting out, not only for others, but for yourself, when you are in a space of you're giving what is best of you, instead of what is just left over from your pain and your discomfort that you are told you need to have? It's that whole analogy of the airplane of when we are in an airplane, let's say it starts going down and those masks come down. It's put your mask on first
Right.
so that you can help the others around you. Even if it's your children, you need to put your own oxygen mask on first so that you can be there to serve them and help them. Rarely are women living in that space. They are constantly living in what can I do for others, be for others at the expense of myself, even when I am in pain. But learning to care for yourself so that you can care for others with what is best of you instead of what is left of you is incredible. It is such an empowered, beautiful, abundant space to be in. And I've lived in both. I've lived in both. And I'm telling you, the work that it takes, the awarenesses that you can have, the self belief and self worth you can build to be in a more abundant space of taking care of yourself for the sake of others versus this other category that we all have lived in and maybe are still currently living in. This one is better.
Yeah. Much,
What
much
is better? It's so much better. And it's taken time and it's taken effort and it's taken a lot of my time, effort, money, all of these things, but it has been worth it 100% to be able to give more and be more and feel good and have energy and all of those things. It is worth it.
Well, I have been very blessed because my two sons, even though they don't live here anymore, and my husband, they are constantly reminding me that I need to take time for me. My one son who lives 1,000 miles away, he usually calls me on his way to work every morning. I think he just needs to open up before he walks into the office. And he'll sense, he will sense right away, what's wrong? And I'll go, oh no, nothing. And he'll go, Mom, why don't you go take a walk? We don't have to talk right now. Or why don't you go ride the bike or something? And I'll say to him, but no, I'm okay. And he'll go, doesn't matter. You need to go take that time for yourself. And I think he realizes that I've always given time to him and his brother, to my husband, when my mother and father were alive, whatever they needed. And I didn't think I deserved it because I was a woman. And for the men in my life to be able to say to me, you deserve it, go take it. I'm going to run with it. Not going to abuse it, but I'm going to run with it. And I hope our listeners can find that same energy, because when you acknowledge what you need, it is so much easier to start recovery.
Mm-hmm. That's the key point right there. It's the acknowledgement. It's almost the acceptance of where you're at now. So accept where you are now. Give yourself grace, give yourself understanding, give yourself acceptance, because acceptance is the only place where we can build from with success. We need to accept where we are starting from to be able to build successfully and sustainably. And that comes, it's the same for everything. Yes, with health, but for these two pillars that have been so pivotal in everywhere I look and everyone I have helped, these two pillars of self belief and self worth are in everything. And
Yes.
understanding and being okay and accepting and having the humility to say, well, my self belief and my self worth are really low. Great. There's nothing wrong. There's no right or wrong here. It's just understanding where you yourself are at and how that works. And then you can build from there sustainably in the best way.
So how can my listeners find you and follow you and keep getting some great advice?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I am honestly just here to serve. I love coming on podcasts, telling my story, practicing my craft of speaking and helping others. But I have social media. It's just at Amy Lenius on Instagram and on Facebook. And I do partner with a company down in the US where we focus on nothing but holistic self-improvement, health, wealth, life, love, and how it all intertwines and how we can be successful in all of them, understanding that they all affect one and the other. And we have a free Facebook group that I can share the link with you with that we just post self-awareness things in there every day. We believe in daily self improvement because it's those 1% wins over time that compound for success.
Well, we're gonna put that all in the show notes. So for
Mm.
those of you listening and you're saying, I forgot what Amy just said. Well, guess what? You can go to the show notes. We'll all be there. Or you can always email us here at newclevelandradio@gmail.com. We'll put you in touch with Amy. And thank you so much for making today a very special day and helping empower other women to take care of themselves.
Thank you so much for having me. My DMs are open anytime. I'm happy to chat with anybody.
Thank you. Have a great day.